Manever I say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there, I see them yopo.
Obusha say obi adada o say eye NPP aban a etwa mu omanpanyini Akufo-Addo na pamfo dream katahye kankan proya omudi edi oman yi sika omu wiaye ne enyoma omu yeti a oman nyina no ebe go down the drain yentumi enya ho hwe a wadada so obi dada sa sinihu abusua ene eye meka no say communication director and American so near Okasa Edema Omanpenyini ewo the presidency Felix Ofosu Kwache abekasa na ensemo wabrum edi agu ho no ene enkrofo a wabubo omudin enkrofo ya list omo over 140 people 140 NPP appointees ya meka na say aban edi omo akugina quarter in the next days or in the next months or weeks to come ebe monwanwa ebe chese ebe shoki obia na abusia bepe say ebe ko ne akotie joy news nkomo a eye Felix ekotwetwe wo honom ne sade osi kansa mo no sade ebe ya obia akoma beto ne yam NDC ni bia abusia yenko na yenkotie enkomo no Emra Sisia PENDREAM TV so any message subscribe to the channel, like a video, na share to other platforms. O subscribe ya eboa me juma dia yesu idun hano etum ponti boyen na subscribe eboa ma yenso so yentumi ye ejuma ni ye. Abusha yenko ti enkomo no Emra Sisia.
Is Felix Kwache-Fosu, who is a Minister for Government Communications and also the Member of Parliament for Ibra Sebu Kwaman Kesi. I'm grateful to have you join us for this conversation on the back of what happened in Parliament today with the presentation of the audit report. Sure. And two auditing private auditing firms worked with the Auditor General to do this. We'll get into the specifics now. Right. But my curiosity first is where this sits within the bigger oral agenda. Oral was the thing that drove you into power, arguably. Has government abandoned the oral primary focus and now, following up on audit and other forensic matters? Because as a criticism goes, you are realizing that you promised far more than you can deliver.
First of all, I don't know who is making that criticism. I've heard NPP folks, some of whom have been the subject of intense oral activity, turning around to make these claims. Of course, admittedly, there are those in our party too who
are frustrated.
Would wish that
pace is slow.
Well, not necessarily. You see, oral simply means Operation Recover All Loot. In other words, anybody found to have committed offenses against the state relating to corruption will be taken through a process of prosecution. And once they are convicted, to the extent that it is possible, whatever it is that they have stolen from the state will be retrieved. That is what it is. So there was no other way this was going to be carried out other than through a lawful system, which then means that certain steps have to be undertaken in order to ensure that we meet the requirements of the law. That is the only way that oral was going to be prosecuted. Even before President Mahama became president, he took action to gather as much fact as possible to serve as the basis for further investigation. Now, once the oral committee finished, and as the president and many others have explained, you could not take that document that they had compiled to court because it would not stand scrutiny. You needed to have accredited state agents investigate these matters, gather appropriate evidence, arrest or invite those who are alleged to have committed these offenses, put the evidence together, build the dockets, and then charge them and take them to court. That is precisely what has been happening since we've been in power. There were 280 cases that oral unearthed. They were shared amongst the CID, the NIB, previously called BNI, and then the EOCO, Economic and Organized Crime Office. Now, these entities have been busy at work, and they have done a lot of work. As I speak to you, NIB alone has completed work on 27 dockets, which the Attorney General is working on reviewing some. Some he has taken to court. So, for instance, the National Service Authority case, it involves Gift Owari and Mr. Osei. They have been in court for quite some time. Indeed, 2-3 days ago, another 21 charges were slapped against Mr. Osei. Now, in addition to these two, there's another gentleman who used to work at the National Service who is also standing trial. In addition to them, another 21 people are going to be charged because some work that the Auditor General did has unearthed further evidence against such people. There's a Sputnik V vaccine case involving Kweku Agyeman-Menu. I noticed that he's been in the news engaging in bluster and claiming that nobody has touched him. That is not true. He was arrested, he was interrogated, questioned, and cautioned. There are 2 dockets in respect of him. The Sputnik V vaccine case and then the COVID-19 frontier case. So in the next few weeks, the Attorney General will be taken to court and he will charge him.
Agyeman-Menu, former finance,
so they claim
former health minister.
They claim that he has not been charged is palpably false.
You say he was arrested?
He was arrested by NIB.
When?
Oh, that's a couple of months ago.
So this year, or we're talking about latter part of last year?
Latter part of last year. He was interrogated. He wrote a caution statement. The docket on him has been built, 2 of them. And then he will be taken to court very soon and charged with offenses relating to Sputnik V and then the COVID frontier.
As in what did the investigations establish that
I think that there are cases of causing financial loss to the state and what have you, and things that he did that violated the procurement laws and what have you.
So this relates to causing financial loss to the state?
Violation of the procurement laws and several other charges that the Attorney General will be preferring against him. So it is not true that he has not been touched and he is working a free man. He is by no means a free man. Of course, until he is convicted, his liberty to be granted him. He can go wherever he wants, but he is being dealt with by the appropriate security agencies.
So now, he wasn't detained, were arrested.
Of course, you'll be there for some time. Once they are done with you, they will release you. In fact, I mean, it hardly occurs that even people standing trial are kept in custody, unless under exceptional circumstances. Chairman Wontumi, for instance, and the others who are standing trial with him, they go and come. And that has been the trend. When Dr. Atufosi and go on trial, they were going and coming. They were never kept in custody. So that in itself means nothing. Now, if you look at the Accra SkyTrain project case, for instance, Mr. Solomon Asamoah and Professor Ameya Kofi are standing trial. Now, in spite of what the OSP is doing on SML, there's another case that the Attorney General is looking into regarding SML. And that one to a docket.
So this directly relates to Ken Ofori-Atta?
Yes, and others too. And in the fullness of time, the Attorney General will unravel that. There's a free Wi-Fi case, for instance. That one too, the docket is ready. Very soon they will be standing trial. There's a National Lottery Authority. There's a Buankra Inland Ports. There's DRIP. I've mentioned COVID-19 frontiers already involving Agyeman-Menu and one Samuel Bansa. There's a Pualugu Multipurpose Dam. There's a National Ambulance case. The Mathematical Sets case. Moshosho Rice case.
No, but what are the updates? You just mentioned.
They have
what's the
dockets
update on them?
with individuals who have all been cautioned. Evidence has been gathered against them. Dockets have been prepared, which means that the documentation upon which the Attorney General will be going to court is ready. So it's only a matter of time before they are taken to court and formally charged, and then the trial will begin. There's the duplicative digitalization case. There's a West Blue judgment debt case. There's a Bank of Ghana value for money audit. The National Cathedral value for money audit is actually ongoing. So once that is completed, based on the findings that are made, action will be taken. There's All African Games. Indeed, that one, the Auditor General has finished his audit, and in the next few days he will be releasing it. So I can disclose that to you. And several others, the Japan royalties, the Polo Club.
There's a lot of interest in the Japan royalties.
Yes, that one.
What's there?
So that one, they are almost done with the investigation. And once they are done, they will put together a docket. The Australia visa scandal, for instance, is a matter that has been looked into. The AFCON 2024 budget, and then the Ghana Trade Fair land case. Now, if you go to Yoko, they have over 40 cases that they are looking into, with over 100 people who have gone through the same process that I have just outlined. NIB has about 43 people. So when you put that together, we are talking in excess of 140 people who have been questioned and have gone through various processing leading to prosecution. So any claim that oral is dead or oral is not being fulfilled is simply not the case. In the Edu Buahin case, that is the the National Signals Bureau case, for instance, the state is left with just 2 witnesses to conclude its case. In the Woon-to-me case, the state has actually wrapped up its case, and Woon-to-me is being invited to either do a submission of no case or open his defense, which is the standard practice in any trial. In the National Service case too, they are going through the motions for people to stand trial and all that. So any claim that oral has been abandoned or that oral is not working is simply not true. The NPP, as part of their propaganda, puts that out, like what Ajimamenu is doing. Here is a man who has been held, and yet he claims nothing has happened, when the evidence shows that indeed something is happening. So I can understand, if you see the magnitude of the corruption that we have to deal with. I mean, for instance, what was revealed in Parliament today. These are but I'm only citing it. These are jaw-dropping instances of corruption. So it is natural that it will anger people, and they will demand swift action. And government is committed to engaging in that swift action, except that we have to go through due process. And not all the processes are in the hands of government. For instance, when the matter goes to court, it falls within the bosom of the court and trial judge to dictate the pace. And in all the cases that have been in court so far, the Attorney General has done his bit by moving on with the case, making his case strongly, and in some cases nearing the completion of the making of his case. So I would argue that oral is very much on course, and that the right things are being done. Of course, there could always be room for speeding up the process. Why not?
The promise of oral, though, wasn't about prosecution necessarily. Prosecution was a means to recovering all loot.
But if, you see...
and you are nowhere near that.
No, but you see, Evans, I cannot simply accuse you of stealing this laptop and then purport to recover it. Recovery comes only after you've been convicted of the offense. Then the state says that we have cited this property, that if we confiscated, would represent proceeds of the crime, or that we could sell or do something with it to recover whatever it is that we lost to you by virtue of the commission of that crime. But up until the time that they are convicted, the most that the state can do is to freeze their assets. In other words, ring-fence and protect it pending the conviction so that the state can take it over. And in that regard, absolutely 1.5 billion Ghana cedis in assets frozen in relation to, and that is for Iyoko alone. I've not spoken about what FIC has done or what even the NIB and co are doing. So any claim that government is not making an attempt to recover...
You pulled that figure out recently.
Yes.
But I've not seen a breakdown of when you say 1.5 billion.
You see, again, the reason
what
why...
Is the breakdown
the reason why it was even
necessary.
For instance, in Chairman Woon-to-me's case alone, close to 50 million Ghana cedis of money in his account has been frozen. Similar figures are involved in the Dubois case, for instance, in the National Service case, and many others. Indeed, there were those who accused the president of misleading them when he said that Iyoko had, as it were, recovered 600 million Ghana cedis. That was in respect of the normal, everyday cases that Iyoko handles, because they deal with issues of money laundering, cyber crime, cross-border crime, carjacking, and what have you. So those are regular things that they do. But in respect of oral, they are not going to be able to recover until the persons involved have been convicted by a court. That then will give them the legal remit to recover whatever it is that is alleged to have, or the court would have found to have been stolen. But for now, what they can do is to freeze it. And they have done it. 1.5 billion Ghana cedis. That is what the situation. And this is even for the cases that they've been able to touch. Those that they've not touched, they are still in the process of tracing these assets. And you know that any time that anybody comes under investigation or is undergoing prosecution, they do concurrent tracing of assets so that as much as possible, we secure what we believe will be commensurate to the amounts involved in offenses that would have been committed.
You had promised when you were campaigning that you had estimated to recover over $20 billion.
I don't think that is what was said. What was said was that the total amount involved in the offenses that have been committed. Yes. That is what it was.
And the oral.
Of course. But the point then is
and the oral.
Absolutely.
The intention is in the name.
Of course.
So if you say over 20 billion is the estimate, then the natural assumption is that you're telling us that you intend to recover that.
It is entirely possible to prosecute somebody and not find anything, because he would either have squandered whatever it is that he has looted, or hidden it in a way that is a bit difficult to find.
I guess that's why you're freezing assets now.
So that they do not dissipate it or transfer it or move it beyond the reach of the state. But wherever any asset is found, to be in the possession of anybody who is under investigation for oral, that asset is immediately frozen. And I'll give you some numbers in respect of specific individuals who are standing trial.
So as we speak right now,
yes,
there are people not only in your party, but key individuals, some of them who play the role in the oral committee itself, like Domalebo, who publicly, not once, at least even here on my show, had raised concerns about the pace of the work that is currently being done by the agencies and the government to realize the full ambition behind the oral.
You see, people have
those people, because they know they were there, they've done it. They don't trust that the government is moving fast enough.
I'm not sure. Again, you have to define
that the actuals is not matching.
You see, you have to define
the
what you mean by government is not moving fast enough. So I've told you what NIB has, and it is under a year. The Attorney General was sworn into office sometime in February last year, and within a year, he is able to supervise a situation where 27 dockets and another 40 cases being looked into by Yoko has been able to get 140 people and beyond, and seized assets worth 1.5 billion Ghana cedis, with quite a number of people standing trial. When the case goes to court, not Mr. Dumelovo or any of the critics can determine how the judge conducts the case. And it is imperative that, you see, when we were in opposition, we used to accuse the NPP of manipulating the judiciary. We used to say that the NPP did not allow for an independent judiciary. It is not the submission of the individuals saying this, I would imagine, that we should manipulate the judiciary to achieve certain political ends. That government cannot do. What government can do is to build a case, gather sufficient evidence, and then go to court to convince the court that this individual or that individual has committed this crime, for which reason this punishment ought to be meted out. And where we find any assets involved, we retrieve it for the benefit of the case. That has been done. And I believe that we need to acknowledge the work that has gone into it. Of course, are we all frustrated about the pace of work of the Ghanaian judiciary? It's a long-standing criticism against the Ghanaian judiciary. But it is not something that government bears responsibility for. Government has tried to find ways around it. So, for instance, Cabinet has approved the reintroduction of the tribunal system, which in any event is in the Constitution. Of course, in the past, because of some happenings in the past, it came under criticism and it was shelved. But it is something that has been resuscitated, and very soon it will be rolled out to deal with cases of oral and cases involving illegal mining and other cases that clog our court system. So a lot is happening in that regard. But as for the fact that government can dictate the pace of cases being handled by a court or a judge, that one is beyond the complete.
The question then is, when did the NDC know this? Because of the pitch.
But you see, Evans, I want you to give me...
The pitch in the campaign
Evans, I want you to
ahead of the election
yes,
was you were absolutely sure that you could nail these individuals.
But of course, but that is exactly what we are doing.
Together.
If we didn't believe that we could nail it, why is
it was the expectation that there was no expectation management.
Evans,
now you're doing expectation management.
Evans, no.
That the court ultimately will decide.
But of course, but who has ever been in doubt in Ghana that a court will decide the guilt or otherwise of anybody? Since at least we return to...
But during a campaign.
But Evans,
everybody articulated it.
Now, Evans, did we ever
created
say...
impression,
No, Evans, did we ever say...
knew for certain.
Did we ever say during the campaign that we were going to use extrajudicial means? Did we ever say so?
It was always going to be through the judicial.
Absolutely. So when you say that...
Always going to be.
When you say that...
It is the reason why...
Yes.
Within the party, there's frustration.
No.
Because they know definitely that has to go to court.
But
they've been told to expect that this will almost happen as a matter of fact. As a matter of automaticity.
How so?
But obviously it's not the case.
I don't think that is fair.
Isn't that why there is...
It is neither fair... You see, people have expressed frustration. People have expressed frustration about the pace of cases in courts in Ghana. It's a long-standing criticism against the judicial system. It is not a recent development or phenomenon. It's a long-standing criticism that the judiciary of Ghana has faced. Even we who are in leadership have had to criticize them in that regard. But that is not something that you lay at the doorstep of government. What should government have done that it has not done? It has not done, I beg your pardon. So Adimamenu is all over the place engaging in bluster, claiming that he is working a free man. I have just shown you that he is not a free man by any means. You understand me? So whatever has to be done to hold him to account is being done. Whatever has to be done to hold the National Service folks to account is being done. They have been taken to court, and they've been in court for quite some time. Edu Boahin was the first person to be taken to court. I have told you that, but save 2 witnesses. The case is almost, the state has almost made this case. In Wuntumi's case, the the state has finished making its case. The court will determine when Wontumi comes to either open his defense or make a submission of no case, which is standard. It is a regular development in criminal cases.
Was oral oversold?
Oral was not oversold. No, promise. How was oral oversold? Again, we need, I insist that we need to go back to exactly what exactly was said under oral that has not been done. When we said we're going to engage in oral, what did we say we would do that we have not done? Have we not arrested people? I have told you the numbers, 140. Under which regime have you had this number of people being interrogated by security agencies? 140. I have told you that. Indeed, I can read out the names to you if you are interested. You understand the point I'm making? I also listed to you the cases and showed you where everyone is. Of course, you cannot take all the cases to court at the same time. It doesn't happen under any jurisdiction. In fact, under the NPP, the first time that they secured any conviction was 3 years after they came into power. 3 years after they came into power. It is most likely that we will get convictions faster than happened under the NPP. Because of the pace at which it has moved. For instance, if the Attorney General has finished making his case in the Wontumi matter, it is much quicker than was previously the case. Of course, people have expressed disquiet about how interlocutory injunctions are used to frustrate the processes. But that is beyond the reach of government. If a discussion has to be had about how to free up the court system and make it faster, why not? Let's have that discussion. And I've indicated to you what government is doing to ensure that these cases do not get bogged down by the sheer numbers. So one of the ways is to use the tribunal system, which has not been used since 1990, at least since our return to constitutional rule. We are bringing it back as a way of speeding up these processes. Even that has to go through a certain legislative process to get it approved, and then we roll them out. So much is being done, whereas we acknowledge people's expectation that things ought to be done quicker. There's a lot of urgency that is being applied. Also, it is imperative that those who are handling these cases do a thorough job. You see, the NDC, President Mama or his government are not simply interested in throwing people into jail for the sake of it. So, if allegations are made against you, we have to be certain that those allegations can stand scrutiny in court before you go. That is what every Attorney General with a sword will do. Unlike you and I, who can engage in speculation and say things and get away, he cannot go to court and get away with half-baked cases. He has to do a thorough job, and that's precisely what is happening.
On some of the specifics that you disclosed tonight, particularly, I'm interested in Ajimamenu.
Yes.
Do you have any clarity when specifically when they...
Indeed, in a matter of days, he will go to court.
Okay.
Yes.
Are we going to get a briefing first? If the Attorney General deems... But you're certain that a case will be sent...
It will go to... In fact, there are two. It is not just one case. Two different... Sputnik and the what do you call it? COVID-19, the Frontiers case. Yes, the dockets are before the Attorney General as I speak.
Let's speak to the presentation before Parliament today by the Deputy Finance Minister on the 68+ billion cedis arrears that you inherited. Why was it necessary? Because fundamentally, this was an audit report.
Yes.
You could say in all intents and purposes, an Auditor General's report, because of course, although it was done together with EY and PwC, they will be working on that.
The Auditor General has the power to engage any external...
And that is why I'm asking why this approach to come to Parliament present, because normally it would just simply go to the Public Accounts Committee and the work will be done. But you chose
in fact, of course,
to have the minister himself, deputy, on the floor presenting it.
Of course, there's an element of transparency that needs to be brought to the way that government business is conducted. Even Parliament itself is subject to public scrutiny. Same for the judiciary. Now, in the 2025 budget, the Minister for Finance told Parliament that as part of efforts to tighten public financial management and avoid leakages and hemorrhaging of the public purse, he was going to commission an audit into arrears claims that had been brought to him, totaling 68 billion Ghana cedis. So he told Parliament in 2025. In the 2026 budget, he told Parliament the same thing, that the audit was ongoing, and then when it is done, he will come back to brief the House. Yeah. Exactly. So the audit was concluded, and it was necessary that, having promised or committed to briefing Parliament is made up of representatives of the people. Indeed, it is Parliament that approves the budget and empowers the finance minister to spend. So Parliament has oversight responsibility to look at how public finances are managed and how the funds that they approve for the utilization of government are used. So it was in that spirit that the finance minister deemed it necessary to brief Parliament. Now, the report itself is made up of 2 volumes. They are quite voluminous, with hundreds and hundreds of pages. So it was not going to be possible to read everything in Parliament. So what happened was that the report was laid. In other words, it was presented to Parliament for consideration. Then the Speaker will refer it to the appropriate committee. But in order that Parliament is made aware of the gravity of the findings contained in the report, the Deputy Minister for Finance, who was representing his boss, the Finance Minister, read key highlights of the report. And it was harrowing. You see, it's as if every single policy that the NPP implemented was designed to line the pockets of people or fleece the nation. So you bring 68 billion Ghana cedis for payments. The Auditor General looks into it and finds that only about 45 billion Ghana cedis was valid and could be paid. And that up to 13 billion Ghana cedis could not even be charged at all because there were no supporting documents. In some instances, there are no supporting contracts. In other words, there's nothing that shows that government has committed to obtaining the services of a particular entity to do a job, for which reason the need to pay would arise. There's nothing that backs the claim. And yet, these claims have been presented.
You mentioned this, indeed, you're right.
Yes.
The finance minister first articulated this in his budget of last year. And when he came here, he gave us a bit more clarity when he was on PM Express.
Yes.
So I've just been looking at what he said last year, and there are a few discrepancies in the numbers. And I just want to put it out so you can reconcile. In paragraph 151, where he touches on this, it says, as at the time we're speaking, page 25 of the 2026 budget, 10.4 billion in claims were rejected.
Yes.
As at the time,
yes.
Due to unsupported documentation.
Yes.
As you know, today, in what was presented, the amount rejected is 8 billion.
Of course, that is because at the time...
So there's a discrepancy.
Yes,
there.
at the time, some claims were not supported by documents. Subsequent to that, documents were brought to show that there was legitimate basis for it, and they were accepted and validated. So there's really nothing wrong with it.
So that, again, comes to my question. Because I read the document today, and I'm thinking, isn't there plausible explanations for why some of these things happened? So I see unsupported documentation. It doesn't necessarily mean that documents aren't there. Maybe you couldn't find at the time that you were.
Of course, but if the document cannot be found, then there's no basis to pay. What will ground the payments?
But that doesn't mean necessarily there's plunder, because you use those words.
No.
Plunder, there's corruption.
Government
to line their pockets.
Evans, government is a serious entity. It is not possible, or it should not be possible, for a whole government institution like the Finance Ministry not to have records on contracts that have been awarded. That speaks to a certain level of disorganization that is unacceptable.
This is Ghana.
It is not tenable.
I mean, I read the Auditor General's report every year.
Evans, but it may be Ghana. But we must stop at some point. And indeed, the Deputy Finance Minister stated it profoundly when he said the rot stops now. If we run a country where documents regarding contracts involving millions of Ghana cedis of the taxpayers' money cannot be produced to support payment, then we cannot be serious as a country. So it has got to stop somewhere. And therefore, if you cannot show documents, no official should be willing to authorize payment. Because even if, let us assume that the contractor or the supplier did not have documents. What about the ministry that awarded the contract? Or the entity that approved payment? What did they base that approval on? So we cannot accept such untenable claims and on that basis proceed to make payment. It is simply not tenable. I mean, how do you have a situation where the Ministry of Trade says that they have paid 89 million Ghana cedis to 5 banks as interest for monies that government...
so government share of interest.
A government share of interest in
the 1D1F companies, yes.
Now, the auditors make contact with the 5 banks, and all of them flatly deny that any such monies have been paid. In one breath, in fact, in one instance, they said that 10.5 million Ghana cedis had been paid to a specific account in a specific bank. The auditors go there, and in fact, they even provide a supposed account number. The auditors go there and they find that the account number does not exist, and that the entity has no such bank account into which any such monies could have been paid. And in fact, no such monies were paid. But the Ghana's records show that monies have been paid. And it was paid to this particular bank.
Let's interrogate the first one about the 1D1F shared interest payments.
Yes.
Because I see that's the single largest infraction, if you like, irregularity.
Yes.
Because 89.4 million, that's
a lot of money. Yes, that's a lot of money.
But I really carefully, Felix, and because you've been in government before,
sure.
If these monies were indeed paid, because you say that, you say, quote, 89.4 million of hard-earned public money could have been disbursed to settle non-existent liability, even the money had been paid, right? Even if this was paid, this would have gone to the bank accounts of these banks.
Yes.
Because it was monies that they were owed. It had been presented as loans, of course. So the government was paying its share of the interest. So the banks would have benefited, but not an individual.
Yes.
So where is this? Because the whole thing has been framed as this is a scheme to create financial,
not to impugn any financial institution. But financial institutions have been known to engage in wrongdoing all the time. Some of them are fined. Some of them have their leaders imprisoned elsewhere. So it will not be unheard of for some collusion to exist between financial institutions and individuals in government. Because if you say that you've brought a claim of 89.4 million that should be paid to some banks, and the banks say that no such liability or payment is due them, because even the basis upon which the payment is to be made does not exist. That is clear fraud. And then another instance where
fraud is, who's benefiting then? So because this is share of interest.
But
bank had given out loans. So if the government is paying its share, so it's paying the banks.
No. But somebody will go for the money eventually. That is how it works.
But there's also there's also a plausible reason why this is possible. Because I was thinking about it. Right? We all take notes. What about the possibility that reconciliation challenge had happened? So, for example, government had actually finished paying off this interest. But the bank has the accurate records. The government does not.
How so?
It's very possible.
No, first of all, so how is it
you reconcile the payment?
No, how is it?
You pay over Evans,
we are not talking about 3,000 Ghana cedis, 4,000, or let's say 100,000 Ghana cedis. We are talking 89.4 million Ghana cedis. How can officials or state institutions not have accurate records to reflect this? How do you tell me that you've gone to pay 10.5 million Ghana cedis to a particular account, and yet the account does not exist? What kind of lapse allows this sort of thing to happen if it is not deliberate to fleece the public purse? I'm not talking 100,000 for which you can claim an oversight or some laxity on the part of some official. We are talking 89.4 million Ghana cedis. And indeed, if it is so easy to dissipate public funds on the basis of poor record keeping, then God help us all.
But if that amount had been paid, it goes to the bank account. And the banks have a record that the loans, the interest have already been paid.
Yes, but Evans, if the Auditor General had not looked into this, the money would have been paid. In fact, in some of the cases, bank transfer advice had been processed.
And approved by the ministers.
Absolutely. Waiting at the Controller and Accountant General Department to be paid. They were stopped. If they had not been stopped, they would be paid. But for this audit and the vigilance of the current managers of the public purse, these monies would have been paid. And I can assure you that they will not have been paid in error. Because I don't see how anybody can make such an error. It is too colossal an amount for such an error to be made, for it to go through all the steps. Because securing payment from government for work done is not for the faint-hearted, I can assure you. The series of steps that you have to go through, the rigorous checks that you have to go through before it gets to the desk of the minister are quite substantial. So for nobody within the chain to have spotted this, infraction, up to the level where the claim has been presented for payment, it's a serious and mind you, there are two organizations involved here. There is the Ministry of Trade, which is supposed to be a properly established government entity with experienced and professional individuals helming affairs, right? And then there's the Ministry of Finance, which has to make the payment, and that has to subject claims sent to them to scrutiny before And the systems and structures in that place are such that such a thing cannot be missed.
And this happened in 2024.
Yes.
So you're talking about Katie Hammond's tenure as trade minister.
It's not too clear who was
there.
But that should be easily identifiable. It shouldn't be difficult.
Okay. And I'll come to the specifics of what happens to the individuals who sign up. But there's also the unfounded teacher training arrears, which is jaw-dropping.
Absolutely.
The Ministry of Education reported unpaid allowances totaling 160 million to teacher trainees under the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission. However, when it was checked with GTEC, the agency confirmed that as of December 2024, there was no outstanding arrears. Over 159 million would have been lost, but for this audit.
You see, Evans, again, we are not talking 100,000, 200,000 Ghana cedis, which you can easily dismiss and pin it down to some oversight on the part of some official. We are talking 160 million Ghana cedis. How is it possible that such an amount had already been paid, and yet another claim had been brought to be paid? In fact, indeed, this rings true. The statement that was read today, there were multiple recycled payments, things that had been paid already. In fact, again, the document trail, the paper trail, the sort of work that would have gone into checking it at every stage would leave no doubt about the fact that these amounts have been paid. And yet, another claim was made. And indeed, if the audit had not been carried out, it would have been paid. Again, it means that there was no guarantee that any checks would have been conducted.
I recall there was a time in early 2017, 2018, that emerged that some government officials had been paid double.
Yes.
Double payments. In fact, some of them there was suggestion that they were going to be tried.
Yes.
Doesn't that explain that the whole public salary compensation payment architecture is broken?
Is it that one? So, for instance, I'm a minister and then I'm an MP. You are not supposed to be paid for both jobs. So you are paid one salary. But when you are appointed a minister, you are given an appointment letter with terms and conditions of service. They take your details to put you on the public payroll. So, in fact, it's even entirely possible for the minister or MP not to notice the payment, depending on how active his account is. So, it is the duty of those who process the payment to merge their systems and spot this. But we are talking about a few hundreds of thousands of cedis, which in the larger scheme of things may seem small, and so you can miss. But not 160 million Ghana cedis, not 89.4 million Ghana cedis, not 10.5 million Ghana cedis, Evans. That is simply not explainable under any circumstance. And you see, again, you need to notice that the Auditor General, before publishing his report, issues management letters. So they seek responses. If they are satisfied by the response, they will flag the particular transaction that they are looking into. So before they publish, they would flag a particular transaction. It means that they are not satisfied with the explanations that have been offered, or they are not satisfied with the documentation that is provided. And mind you, it is not just the Auditor General that did it. These are world-class, reputable audit firms with a track record of solid performance who carried out this audit on behalf of the Auditor General.
Except that if the 160 million had been paid, it would have gone to teachers who had already been paid.
Yes. So the teacher would have received, and it's entirely possible the teacher may not notice, depending on how active they can be. But in any event,
where's the fraud and the corruption?
No, but the point is that you are assuming that it will go to the teachers. That's the assumption you are making. You also have to avert your mind to the fact that there are conduits through which these things are channeled. Those who do this and cook it up have ways. For instance, you would assume, wouldn't you, that if there are ghost names on the payroll of National Service, those payments will go into specific accounts belonging to specific individuals, right? How do the perpetrators find a way to sweep or mop up those funds for their own use? Because they have an elaborate scheme and system, sometimes in collusion with financial institutions to do so. Or let me rather rephrase, in collusion with individuals in financial institutions to do so. So these findings are mind-boggling. They are deeply troubling. And it shows that a lot has to be done to ensure that it does not happen. And that is how come I am particularly gratified about the steps that this finance minister and his team are taking to avert this sort of thing. And they insist that the right, in fact, now even before a contract is awarded, what you have to go through in order to get it approved and funded is enough to convince any observer that the system is being improved. Strict financial discipline is one thing, but ensuring that loopholes are not exploited is quite another. And we are determined as a government to ensure that this does not happen again. There's no way that this sort of thing will be allowed to happen.
I'm going to take a break. We're going to return. So what is going to happen to the individuals who were responsible for these matters as the auditors have uncovered? I'll ask him about that. And then the fundamental question of, so today was submitted to Parliament. The Public Accounts Committee will have to deal with this particular matter. Individuals will have to be invited. As this was presented to the House today, there wasn't a suggestion, and I haven't seen it in what was presented, that the responses that were sought were captured, at least in the statement that was on the floor. And many have said, to be fair, and I've heard Felix accused of being propagandist on the matter, and the government was being propagandist on the matter. In other words, if they really wanted to be fair to the issue, in this statement that was presented to Parliament, they would have also captured the responses that the various individuals and institutions gave to explain why some of these irregularities happen. Now, I'll put that question to him. Is the government simply being propagandist about this to score political points against their political foes or opponents? Stay with me.
Enti abusafo sa utie enkomo na ekoso na obehu se na chese oman ne de omadi adwirim ankasa oman panyina Kufuado one ne apamfo omadi adwirim ankasa enti like oman panyini Mahama na waba no eye nyame ene hye dade oman panyini Mahama eba. I'm telling you eye oman nyame ene hye da edi omampanyini Mahama ma yese nkrofo esika ya oma wia Ghana fo sika nkrofo ya wia na dwiri momudi edi saa oman yi baby a omudi oman yi sika sama ko hye busua nyame na di omampanyini Mahama abre yese meka ne se ebitumi aboa ma saa sika ni nyina no yetumi age edi ama oman Ghana. Enti so obi dada o say NPP for be form ho dia ana say Kufuado ni appointees no be form ho dia all dada so man panyini Mahama ka say resetting agenda no ye gusu a ye be ye ho adwuma wa mini business enya agro ye bidi agro abusia trust me nipa be demo nipa NPP for be demo no. And I like it because Abusia best serve as a deterrent to even our current offense NDC government appointees or motosui. Because yes, we of funds are no show de. It is a ne when your opportunity near the wako CEO position be, when your opportunity near the wako to institution be, when your opportunity near the ajuma bi asha on sa. Shana yen ye free yam ayen se ye di adeswa and aswa say ube free mu aye juma pa edi ama Ghana man. And yes, over Juno Kwa Ubutum, and yes, over Juno Wankasa when he and yes, over Tintam, Ubi Via or Minisika, na afi woody nam na unquasia sem sabu, unquasia sem, and massam ne a Nije fun and a chess at old babe, and yet family property. And yet, Abusia, and your family and friends do things that will affect the good people of this county. Do things that will affect their lives positively. Abusia, and yet, you know, you have cost on the encotuaso, the NT and commonly. Hane, and Conacuti and common no uncasa who say, and yet betesa. And ya betesa nyoma akoso na omampanyini so gusu a o hyehyɛ nyoma omampanyini Mahama gusu a o hyehyɛ nyoma o make sure say boni bia nkrofo wi edi ye no yebetumi afa kwan bi so atumi aiden agi saskani nyina edi afri omonsam. Yes, enti yanko na yanko toaso na yenti enkomo no emra and Yankoni and Kuti and Comonumra, Sisia.
Press is on the Joy News channel. My name is Evan Spencer, and I'm in conversation with the Minister for Government Communications and MP for Ay3 Kesi on the back of a presentation today about some jaw-dropping revelations in an audit report put together by the Auditor General, EY, and also PwC. It was presented by the Deputy Finance Minister to Parliament on the floor today. And fellas, you've been criticized of just playing propaganda with this. And the accusation is when this was presented, first of all, the audit report itself was not what was presented. And this was an extract from it. And that when you were extracting from the report, you were careful to select only areas that advance your case, that this is fraudulent and this is plunder, targeting your political opponents. Is this just all part of a conspiracy to score political points?
Well, I had my bites on the statement in Parliament, and I assailed the NPP's pension to side with the criminals who want to loot and fleece the public purse. That when a minister has come to Parliament to apprise us of developments that threaten the very foundation of our financial management, you have people in the opposition who are lending support to this criminality and purporting to defend what they should not be defending. Again, it is false that the minister did not present the audit reports. Indeed, the audit reports are in 2 volumes, volume 1, volume 2. He formally, officially laid that audit report in Parliament. It was on that basis that the Speaker referred it to the committee to look into. The Speaker did not refer the statement to the committee to look into. Again, how does anybody expect the finance minister to be able to read hundreds of pages of an audit report in Parliament? The only way he could present it was to give extracts, excerpts, highlights of the reports. So I fail to see the locus of the NPP in this one. Why are they defending the criminals? Why are they siding with criminals against the people of Ghana?
The point I make, how do you trust that what you have
First of all,
put together
the minority leader
represents?
In fact, the minority leader doing his contribution in Parliament today quoted copiously from the audit report. So if they didn't have it, how was he quoting from it? He was given copies of it. The majority leader had copies. Parliament itself was served with a copy. And that is what will be referred to the Public Accounts Committee to look into. So if I have given you copies of the audit report, the original copies, why would I come and say something that is not in that report? Again, this claim that we should have stated the responses.
Why didn't you?
The Auditor General will not flag any transaction if he is convinced that appropriate explanations have been given. So it is not the place of a minister to come and defend persons who are accused of wrongdoing.
But if you're to be fair, you would at least tell us what the responses were.
The reason why the finance minister commissioned the audit in the first place was to know whether to accept or reject the claims that were being made. If he is presented evidence by no less an entity than the Auditor General's Department, we should trust the word of an NPP MP who is supporting the criminality, the naked rape, the plunder, the brazen theft of public resources over the Auditor General, who has actually looked into the facts, reviewed documentation, and spoken to the people concerned. What work has the NPP done to be able to say that what has been said is not true? Where is the evidence? Who did they speak to? Where is the documentation that supports it? What audit? When did the NPP become an auditing firm? Who amongst them has audited these transactions to come to a conclusion that what the finance minister was saying was not true? But for the records, it is a blatant falsehood that the audit report was not brought, it was brought to Parliament.
So you presented it?
Absolutely. And the minority leader, I will repeat, the minority leader had copies from which he quoted when he was contributing to the debate.
Now, the demand to, at least in this particular statement, which is the subject of a public conversation now,
yes,
because we don't have the actual report, would have given us a balanced view.
No, what balanced view?
Also because even in the report that was presented, there's an admission that 13.3 billion is, quote, amounts to be justified before payment. So
yes.
there's a grey area there yet to see be dealt with.
But the reason was given by the Auditor General for not accepting that 13 billion yet.
So which means that possibly
at the time
there may be cases to justify these.
Yes, so the Auditor General has not pronounced.
Legitimate.
No, the Auditor General has not pronounced on the 13. He has said that he has not accepted it because of the lack of documentation. Sometimes lack of a contract binding government to any payment. So that is clearly stated in the report. But he says he has rejected 8 billion because of the infractions that I have highlighted to you today. That is clearly stated in the report.
That's true.
Yes.
But the point I make is, I see the description of the 13.3 billion here as amounts to be justified.
Yes, they have not been justified.
Before payment.
And if they are not justified, they will not be paid.
It leaves room for the possibility that there's indeed justification for the 13.3 billion.
But there's no controversy
Right?
over the 8 billion. The Auditor General says amount rejected, and he has explained. In fact, he has broken it down in the report. He says that in some instances, there are no supporting documents. In some instances, there are no contracts. In some instances, they are fictitious. In some instances, they've been paid already. You yourself have gone through the report this evening for the benefit of your viewers. In respect of the 13 billion, he says as of now, or as of the time he was finalizing his report, no justification had been provided for the payment. If justification is ever brought, it will be paid just like the 45 billion has been paid. But I am questioning the minority as to why they are more interested in defending the looters as against protecting the interests of the
you
public.
also know that all...
And again, they speak about propaganda. They are the ones dabbling in propaganda. For instance,
so?
today, when right under their noses, the report had been laid in Parliament, they were saying that the report had not been laid. When their own minority leader was holding the report and quoting copiously from it to support his debate, they said the report had not been given them.
You know, the fact that an auditor had rejected a response does not mean that it will hold before a court of competent jurisdiction.
But of course, the fact that I have accused you of stealing this phone does not mean that...
Absolutely.
So
isn't that why
No.
then in presenting
No.
the public narrative,
No.
at least give us the other side?
You see, the finance minister has an obligation
They
to
are being
pay.
fair to the people who will be
The finance
indicted in this
minister,
matter.
the finance minister has an obligation to pay any monies that government owes to contractors or suppliers. Before he does that, he must be convinced that indeed government owes the people. If he gets evidence that no such indebtedness exists, he won't pay. That is all that he has come to say. And indeed, he has proven through a thorough, diligent auditing process that up to 8 billion Ghana cedis should be rejected. In fact, the noise that the minority is making, the Oyome case, do you know how it came about? It was contained in an Auditor General's report.
True.
One of them simply said that the matter was contained in an Auditor General's report. The NPP composed songs over it and sang it across studios in Ghana. So when did they realize that there was something wrong with highlighting reports as presented by the Auditor General? When did they realize that? Why? As for Oyome, the blood not flow through him. They were able to compose songs. And for about a year and a half, every day Oyome was discussed in the Ghanaian media. The claim against him was contained in an audit report done by the Auditor General. This is not the first time that audit reports have become the subject of public commentary. And indeed, if anybody feels that they have been unfairly treated by the auditor, they have every recourse to take action to vindicate their rights. In any event, you also do know that the Auditor General also says that 35 companies benefited from Agenda 111 contracts, and they were paid mobilization amounting to $7.5 million, and yet did not set foot on the sites to construct any hospitals. And indeed, he has actually gone a step further to issue notices of surcharge, which he is empowered to do under Ghanaian law. So even before the report was presented, action had been commenced to ensure that the state retrieves whatever it is that has been lost.
So some individuals have already been surcharged?
Oh yeah, they've been served notices. So, and there's a process...
Only related to the Agenda 111?
Yes, those who are held for failure to execute their part of the bargain.
Although they were paid. I believe some 7 million.
Exactly, and indeed, it's not the first time. You recall that the roads minister also revealed that a road contract was awarded to a contractor somewhere in Wale up to about $300 million or so, and 10% mobilization amounting to $30 million was paid. Not 1% of work has been done. So it is a phenomenon that occurred under the New Patriotic Party. So and rather than joining forces with us to stem the tide, they rather seek to defend this criminality.
Yeah, but due process. I mean, the fact that the minister had come to articulate something doesn't mean that it...
No, but Evans, the records show, and it has not been contested, the records show that the monies have been paid. When the monies are paid, it means that the contractor is enabled to go to site and begin work. So when you go there, you will see that work has not been ongoing since we came to power. And yet the records show that the contractor...
Beyond the surcharge, though.
Yeah.
What else is the government willing to do?
Indeed. So those who were within the approval chain, because this must go to some officials in both agencies. I mean, the agencies that made the claim and then the finance ministry. To the extent that those individuals have worked on it and have presented it as a charge on the public purse, they will immediately face sanction. In fact, even before the finance minister came to Parliament to brief the House, he had referred the matter to the Attorney General, who is looking into it. Indeed, the National Service case, I told you that 21 additional persons are going to be hauled before court. And it came out of the work of the Auditor General. So the Auditor General's report and work is a source material for the Attorney General to act, irrespective of what Parliament does with the report. And so action is being taken to ensure that those who are responsible for this are held liable.
Because there's a school of thought that says that every Auditor General's report is first the preserve of Parliament, and specifically the Public Accounts Committee.
Not necessarily.
And it is only after the Public Accounts Committee had sat that then
not necessarily.
The Attorney General can...
As I speak to you, the Attorney General is in court on national service because he has picked up information from the Auditor General's report that some crime has gone on. So he can investigate it on his own. It does not preclude Parliament from sitting on it, reviewing it, and taking any action that they may deem necessary. If they go into it and they find that other state agencies have already begun actions in respect of the findings, they will not take any further action. But if they find that there are gaps in addressing the concerns raised in the audit, they will proceed to take action. So there's nothing that precludes the Attorney General or any authority charged with prosecutorial powers from looking into the contents of an Auditor General's report.
Today, after the statement was read, it was referred to the Public Accounts Committee.
That is true.
The Public Accounts Committee is chaired by the former Deputy Finance Minister.
Yes.
And as we've just seen, a lot of the infractions borders on the conduct of the Finance Ministry. Do you see any concerns there about...
Well, of course, I think the majority leader raised it, that there's a clear case of conflict of interest. Of course, that is not to say that she bears any personal responsibility for what has happened. But if the tenor during which these things happened coincided with her work, her stints at the Finance Ministry, then it will not be tenable for her to preside over it because there will be a clear case of conflict of interest. So I'm sure that the Public Accounts Committee, in its own wisdom, will find ways of addressing that conflict of interest situation. I expect that she will recuse herself.
You expect her to recuse herself?
That would be the only tenable proposal, because I don't see how it is entirely different if she was looking into a case relating to another sector. But this one involves a place where she worked. So it will not be in her own interest to preside over this particular
If she chooses not to?
No, I think that Parliament can compel her not to.
Will the majority side make a case for this to happen?
I suspect so, because the majority leader made a strong case today. It's a matter of bringing a motion to the House for the House to decide, yes. But I think that it is in her own interest not to preside over this. Because it will raise many, many questions.
Many years of the Auditor General's report has taught us that a lot of what he had found today, or put out today, isn't entirely new. In fact, irregularities, fictitious.
That is true.
What is it, beyond what has been discovered regarding the previous administration's conduct, how is your government working to make sure that this is not repeated under your own watch?
Indeed, the Deputy Finance Minister broached that subject today when he said that the road stops here. The fact that this has been happening for ages does not mean that we should permit it.
Specifically, what does that mean?
It simply means that additional checks,
such as,
will be put in place. And I told you that even right from the point of award of contracts, significant scrutiny will be carried out. The Finance Minister has spoken about the establishment of a value for money office, which will further strengthen the scrutiny that is carried out to ensure that even the amounts that are being quoted are justifiable in light of the work that is supposed to be done. And then the execution of the project itself, the raising of IPCs, interim payment certificates, the processing of it, and checking against work that has been done. And all the boxes that need to be ticked will be strengthened as a way of proofing us against this sort of wanton abuse of the public purse. So you can expect that going forward, a more tighter regime will be put in place to ensure that this does not happen again. But of course, it starts with punishing those who have done this to serve as a deterrent to anybody who will be thinking of doing something similar. And that is currently ongoing.
Yeah, I mean, you say that, and our Attorney General is going to be looking into this.
Sure.
There's no guarantee that any of that leads to any punishment per se.
Of course.
There are charges there which the Auditor General reserves the right to do.
Sure.
But if you're moving to the arena of criminality, of course, the burden of proof is higher, beyond the Attorney General's work that has happened. So it doesn't necessarily lead to punishment that then becomes a deterrent.
And you see, Evans, you do know that there's not only when you've stolen money that you can be held for monies that are lost to the state. You recall the famous Quality Green case.
Yeah.
The judge, in the very opening pages of his ruling, made it clear that the individuals who are standing trial are not accused of stealing money or having personally benefited from any of the transaction. But because there were things they should have done that they did not do, which has led to the loss, they were being held liable. So if you were supposed to have done something and you did not do it, or you neglected to do so, and it has led to a loss or an attempted effort to defraud the state will hold you. But of course, it means that you have to identify those who were responsible for this. And it should not be difficult to do that because the finance ministry and the ministries or agencies involved are established organizations, and it should not be too difficult to find who was there and who did what. That will be done. And to the extent that the Attorney General finds merit in prosecuting the individuals, he will go ahead to do so. He has clear and express instructions.
And by the way, when this was first raised by the finance minister, the former finance minister, who he succeeded, Dr. Amin Adam, had said that part of the claims that form part of the 68 billion had been accumulated over several years, including from 2012 to 2013.
It does not excuse anything. So, for instance, I speak to you.
But you concede that this is
Evans, let me explain something.
It's not amount that was accumulated only last 8 years.
So if a contract was awarded to a contractor, say 2018, and he had raised a certificate as far back as 2018, but it has not been honored, and in 2026, he brings that certificate for payment. That thing happened under a previous government. Does not justify why you don't carry out scrutiny to ensure that the state does not lose money. So the period in which the liability is alleged or is said to have been incurred is completely immaterial. It is about what you fail to do, which has led to a situation where individuals were perpetrating fraud on the state or the state was losing money. That some contractor was owed as far back as 2010. 2007.
But
it's completely immaterial.
He's right, is it not, when he says that in presenting this case, deliberately, the impression has been created to say all 68 billion have been accumulated under the...
No, Evans, again, it is a completely irrelevant and immaterial point. The issue is not that the state of Ghana owes 68 billion dating back to Achampon's time. That's not the issue. The issue is that 68 billion has been presented to government and it had gone through processes, some of which had gone as far as bank transfer advice for government of Ghana to pay. That really is the issue. As to the year in which the contract was awarded or the said liability would have been incurred, it's completely immaterial.
But if it's if indeed true,
yes,
if it's indeed true that some of the claims date back to 2012, 2015, what it means is that this same audit that had led to trimming the numbers down could and should have been also triggered between 2012 and 2014.
No.
Under your watch.
So let us assume that
under your watch.
You see, so the NPP didn't do it, but we have come to do it.
No, the NDC didn't do it.
So
because you're 2012, 2013, he said.
I'm citing an instance.
Yes.
So the NPP didn't do it last year, but we have done it this year. So what that means that let's say we didn't do it in 2012, they should have done it in 2017, shouldn't they? Does it excuse the fact that they didn't do it? No.
But it also makes you complicit.
No.
You waited.
No, first of all,
you had 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16. 5 years to do it.
We have not been accused of processing these things for payment. The claims may exist. As for claims, they can come in, take them fast. Joy FM can present a bill to my office and claim that my office owes Joy FM some money for some contractual arrangement. It is up to me to carry out necessary scrutiny to make sure that the claim you are making is accurate, whether I was there when the contracting was done or not. So the excuse that Dr. Amin Anta is making, in my view, does not cut ice, and it will not stand scrutiny. Yes.
Thank you very much.
A pleasure.
And that there is Felix Kwachi-Fosu, who's Minister for Government Communications, and MP for Ebra Sebu Kwamankas. Enjoy the rest of it.
Enti abusiafo de dae ekoso ya ene pitri ya de nkomo no abana wiye nti mo amutie ensamo a aban ehhehye ne plans ne strategies are mounted to be able to investigate, prosecute and jail this friends and thieves are omo ekoshe omampanyini Akufo-Addo aban mu ball minor chrono na ene se wote se ebinim eka ena ora no enkosi baabia ora no omuntimi nchia confirm krantum ora no omuntimi nya hwea mesraw wote sansem no bia na wankasa wase omu hu sanse meka ne se biribi eba na biribi ba bisi na ebeye se ngege ebeye hu ebeye de ewukrum ha ti moma yenyina yentime kuchu na yenhwe de ebekwa akusi abusia aha PENDREAM TV message also subscribe to the channel no like video na share to other platforms MIN na o adwenchire bia fato comment section no ase esoso FMIN send de bia ye kan ye say PENDREAM TV also edam yopo
Manever I say ma PENDREAM TV de ose edam yopo